What's good? It's Woog. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you were into the fight talk. We have Tevin Farmer, 30 wins, 5 losses, 1 draw, and 1 no contest, taking on Mickey Bay, 23 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw, and 1 no contest. This is the return of Tevin Farmer. He's been out of the ring since January of 2020. That's pre-pandemic. And his last fight was a decision loss against Joseph Jojo Diaz. Tevin Farmer in that fight lost his IBF 130-pound title, which he had defended successfully 4 times after winning the vacant IBF belt against Billy Dibb. Now, that win over Billy Dibb that secured the title for Tevin Farmer was following a split decision loss against Kenichi Ogawa. That's the guy who just got knocked out by Joe Cordina for the belt. But Ogawa had beaten Farmer via split decision, but then it was overruled and changed to a no contest because Ogawa failed the drug test. But even at that time, Tevin Farmer already had 4 professional losses. Now, the career trajectory of Tevin Farmer, it was pretty interesting. He had lost 4 times early in his career, and he, self-admittedly wasn't taking his career that seriously early on. I mean, he was a late comer to boxing to begin with. Didn't start boxing until, I believe, 19 years old, which is interesting because he's kind of a sweet science guy. He seemed to be like a slick fighter. He's a southpaw. Usually those types of sweet science skills come with having like a deep amateur pedigree. But in the case of Tevin Farmer, for being such a late comer to the sport, he actually has a lot of technical ability. Now, again, he had 4 early career losses, and then he won several fights in a row. And then that led to him contending for that vacant IBF belt against Ogawa. Again, he lost, but it was then ruled a no contest. Then he fought Billy Dibb, beating him via unanimous decision, securing the IBF 130-pound title. And it was that belt that he, again, defended 4 times successfully. And this was when DAZN was first trying to really make a footprint in the United States. Like, I remember first subscribing to DAZN on the night of the Anthony Joshua, or the day, it was a British fight, so it was early in the day. But it was on the day of Anthony Joshua and his title defense against Alexander Povetkin. This, I believe, was like 2018. So around that same time, DAZN, it seemed every few months, had a fight card with Tevin Farmer on it. Sometimes he was headlining, and sometimes he was on the undercard. Like, I remember him either being on the KSI versus Logan Paul, or one of the early Jake Paul, like against Anderson Gibb. He was like on the undercard on one of those fights, as was, Devin Haney at a time, as was Demetrius Andrade. But yeah, Tevin Farmer, like, he was one of the most active fighters on DAZN, and so he was pretty much being, I wouldn't say like elevated, like he never reached star level, but he sure was a star on the DAZN side, on their broadcasting. And so him being a title holder for a few title defenses, yeah, his reputation grew. But then he ran into Joseph Jojo Diaz, and I don't know what happened that night. Like, Jojo Diaz is a good fighter, so I don't want to take anything away from him. But man, it just seemed like Joseph Diaz was just winning the vast majority of the hot exchanges. Now, both Jojo Diaz and Tevin Farmer were about the same height, both shorter fighters. Tevin Farmer's like 5'6". His opponent here, the veteran Mickey Bay, is more like 5'9". So Mickey Bay's going to enjoy like a 3-inch height advantage and a couple inches in reach. But with Tevin Farmer versus Jojo Diaz, it was weird. Tevin Farmer, who, he has like an eye issue, right? Not functionally, I don't believe. Like, his vision has been fine, but he just has like a lazy eye, right? Where both eyes aren't, in alignment. But he was like looking away where his head was moving, like round after round, to the point where the commentary, who is very familiar with Tevin Farmer, couldn't help but note, like, why does Tevin Farmer look like he keeps looking up and away several times per round against Jojo Diaz? And then I believe he had also hurt his hand in the fight. It might have even been his left hand that he injured against Jojo Diaz. And that in itself would be not an excuse, but a reason to lose the fight. I mean, he did, tell his corner, I think after like the first round, that he had broken his hand. So yeah, so he was injured in the fight. But again, it's tough because you don't want to take the performance away from Jojo Diaz. But I just wanted to see them run it back after Jojo Diaz took the title from Tevin Farmer. And, COVID hit within a couple months of that fight happening. So there were like a lot of contractual issues where Tevin Farmer was trying to lobby for the rematch. It didn't end up materializing. I mean, Jojo Diaz never defended his title successfully anyway. He lost it on the scale right before his title defense against Shavkat Rakhimov. But yeah, Tevin Farmer, he didn't look good in that fight against Jojo Diaz. And granted, again, you can't not mention potentially having a broken hand and pointing to that as being a reason why we weren't seeing the same Tevin Farmer that we had seen in his few title defenses prior to that. Now, granted, I think that Jojo Diaz is a better fighter than John O'Carroll, who gave Tevin Farmer a very competitive fight. Tevin Farmer, won it via unanimous decision. That was like his third title defense, but he also beat Francisco Fonseca, James Tennyson, and one other guy. I can't remember the name, but Jojo Diaz was better than the other guys that Tevin Farmer was successfully defending his title against. But since that loss to Jojo Diaz, again, he's been out of the ring for more than 2 years, to the point where many people were wondering, where the hell is Tevin Farmer? Now, they did try to schedule this fight with Mickey Bey a few months ago, but when the president of the UAE, the Arab Emirates, passed away, they canceled that fight, or at least postponed the fight. So here we are a few months later, and Tevin Farmer is now going to make his 135-pound, his lightweight debut. So he's no longer going to be competing at the division that he won the belt and defended the belt successfully at. He's now going to be at 135. His first opponent is Mickey Bey, a 39-year-old veteran. Mickey Bey's been around a while. He was on Mayweather Promotions several years ago, and he had won his first 15 fights, and then he fought a draw with Jose Hernandez, won another couple of fights, and then he suffered his first professional loss against John Molina Jr. And this was in 2013. I mean, so yeah, that tells you how long Mickey Bey's been around. If his first loss, and he's had several fights since, and he was 18-0 when he lost to John Molina Jr. But John Molina Jr., you might have remembered him having a fight of the year. Some had it as the 2014 fight of the year between him and Lucas Matisse, where Matisse finished him finally in the 11th round. This was a great fight between Matisse and John Molina Jr. And that was a couple fights for Molina Jr. after he had beaten Mickey Bey. Just before that, he had lost to Andrei Klimov. He beat Ruslan Provodnikov a few years after that. He had lost via TKO in the 8th round to Terrence Crawford. That was one of Terrence Crawford's 140-pound title defenses as he was becoming undisputed in that division. John Molina Jr. fought a very competitive unanimous decision loss against Adrian Broner. Yeah, so John Molina Jr. fought a lot of good fights, but in that mix, he had beaten Mickey Bey and became the first to beat Mickey Bey via 10th round TKO. So this was in the final round of a 10-round fight. And then Mickey Bey went on to win his next couple of fights, and then he fights Miguel Vasquez. Miguel Vasquez is another one of those guys who's, fought the best during his era, won some, lost some, and then probably stuck around for too long. But when Miguel Vasquez was still somewhat in his heyday, Mickey Bey beat Miguel Vasquez for the IBF lightweight title. So the 135-pound title, Mickey Bey won that via very, I'd say, controversial. It was just a very close, disputed fight. Mickey Bey was awarded the split decision win, and this was in 2014. So after that, he was supposed to fight against Denis Shafikov, I believe. And they had made the fight and then postponed the fight, rescheduled the fight, but Mickey Bey ended up not defending that belt against Shafikov, ended up vacating the lightweight IBF title, and then he fought Naeem Nelson, won that one via unanimous decision, and then he ends up fighting for that IBF lightweight belt again in 2016. And this time he's challenging Rances Barthélemy, who we just saw fight a very interesting and competitive fight against Gary Antoine Russell. But Rances Barthélemy had just won against Denis Shafikov for the vacant IBF belt. Because again, Mickey Bey didn't defend the belt. Shafikov ended up fighting Barthélemy for that lightweight belt. Barthélemy won against Shafikov, and then Mickey Bey fights Rances Barthélemy for Barthélemy's lightweight belt, and then then Barthélemy ends up winning via another close, super close, split decision. So here we've got Mickey Bey, and in most of his most pivotal fights, whether you're talking about his split decision win over Miguel Vasquez or his split decision loss to Rances Barthélemy, he fights a lot of very close and competitive fights. Mickey Bey finds himself in a lot of close fights. But after that loss to Rances Barthélemy, Mickey Bey goes on like a 2-year and 3-month hiatus, over 2 years out of the ring, and then he comes back to fight one fight against Luis Valdivia. He beats Valdivia via first round TKO. This is in September of 2018, and then he spends another year plus out of the ring, comes back in December of 2019 to fight George Kambosos Jr. This is one of George Kambosos' last fights before his fight against Teofimo Lopez. Fought Mickey Bey, then fought Lee Selby, and then fought Teofimo Lopez. But in Mickey Bey versus George Kambosos, I think Mickey Bey won the majority of the first few rounds. Like Chris Algieri was one of the guys on the broadcast, on the call, for Bey versus Kambosos. Bey was actually like the A-side fighter in that fight against Kambosos. And after 7 rounds, the unofficial scorer, Chris Algieri, had Mickey Bey up 4 rounds to 3. And then Kambosos came on strong in the last couple rounds. The 8th round was disputed, could have gone either way. I mean, there were several swing rounds. I'm not saying that Mickey Bey was necessarily up 4 rounds to 3. I'm just saying Chris Algieri had him up 4 rounds to 3 in a very close and competitive fight. And then George Kambosos comes on strong, probably wins the 9th round, and this was a 10-rounder, by the way. And then Kambosos is probably winning the 10th round, hurts and then drops Mickey Bey. Super crucial knockdown for George Kambosos in the last round. He needed that knockdown to secure the win because as the judges had it, George Kambosos ended up winning that fight via split decision. And on that deciding scorecard, because one of them had it super in Kambosos' favor, another judge had it slightly, like 2 rounds in Mickey Bey's favor, minus the point for the knockdown. So they had him winning it by like 3 points, but 2 rounds. But in favor of Mickey Bey. And then the third judge had it slightly for George Kambosos, and we're talking maybe like 3 points, which if Mickey Bey would have come on stronger in the 10th round and won that, then you would have had like a split draw or something like that. But big knockdown for George Kambosos, ended up sealing the deal in his fight against Mickey Bey. And now Mickey Bey, because again, this was December 2019, has been out of the ring for another like 2.5 years. So basically, ever since that loss to Barthélemy in 2016, Mickey Bey has just had one-offs, and then he's out for like a year plus or 2 years plus. So he's been very inactive for the last like 6 years, and now he's 39 years old. So what do I expect in this return for Tevin Farmer and this return for Mickey Bey? Well, Mickey Bey, again, he's a sweet science guy, and if what I've seen to be prime Tevin Farmer would have fought prime Mickey Bey, I might have slightly leaned Mickey Bey. But with the inactivity, plus the age, and I get it, Tevin Farmer's also been inactive, and this is his first fight at lightweight. I mean, Mickey Bey has been a lightweight for years, has been a belt holder at lightweight. Keep in mind, Tevin Farmer won his title at 130, but Tevin Farmer, he's a southpaw one. Not that Mickey Bey has not had success against southpaw. Again, that fight with Rances Barthélemy, another southpaw, was a split decision. Very close and competitive. So Mickey Bey's no stranger to southpaws. But I just can't help but think about Tevin Farmer's last loss at Jojo Diaz, the fact that he had a broken hand, the fact that, like, I've heard Tevin Farmer in some interviews, he sounds like he's really ready to get back in there. And he sounds like he's ready to possibly experience the best stretch of his career. Like, he's still 32 years old. He's not young, but he's not yet old. So I think that if he's still truly committed and he's not somehow become a shot fighter, like, I mean, he did take a beating against Jojo Diaz. Like, it wasn't totally one-sided. It was still somewhat competitive. But, like, Jojo Diaz really did take that fight by the horns. And there were a lot of combinations exchanged where, you know, Jojo Diaz suffered, like, a big gash to his eye early in the fight and basically fought like his career depended on it and came out on top. So I don't know if Tevin Farmer is going to be a diminished fighter after this long layoff, after that disappointing loss to Jojo Diaz. But if he is rejuvenated and is back in top form, I think it's going to take a little while for Mickey Bey to get acclimated to the activity. Not that Tevin Farmer is a super voluminous puncher. He's a counter puncher. He's one of those guys who will kind of sometimes wait a little too long, but he's looking for his counter punching opportunities. But Mickey Bey is also a bit of a counter puncher. Now, when Mickey Bey starts a jab, maybe he could get the jump on Tevin Farmer because Mickey Bey sometimes will play the aggressor more than Tevin Farmer will play the aggressor. I think that if any one of them could be classified as more of a negative style fighter where they are the ones who are waiting for the action versus initiating the action, Mickey Bey, for as sweet science as he is, will initiate the action with some lead jabs and some right hands to go behind those jabs. And he will also get super busy with the left hand. Like, he'll mix it up with between the jabs and left hooks. Like, he'll go jab, jab, left hook, jab, left hook, jab. Like, he'll stay busy with the left and then look for power punching right hand opportunities. But I think that even if Mickey Bey experiences some early round success, I can't help but keep on thinking about how he kind of faded in the last 2 to 3 rounds against George Kambosos in a very tight fight where you know you need those late rounds. Like, Mickey Bey losing those last 2 rounds and getting dropped in the 10th round of a 10-round fight, that's not the type of late round push that you need to secure the deal. Tevin Farmer, I'd imagine, is going to fight this fight, even if he's a little bit rusty. He's going to fight this fight like he absolutely needs this. But Mickey Bey, being 39 years old, being out for another 2.5 years after, again, before that George Kambosos fight, was out for like another year. And then before that fight, before the Kambosos fight, was out for 2 years. That is a lot of inactivity. Even though this is a 10-rounder, and I was almost going to say maybe shade towards Mickey Bey because it's a 10-rounder and not a 12-round fight, but even though it's a 10-rounder, I still think that it's going to be Tevin Farmer who's going to be having the more impressive late-round performance from rounds like 8 through 10. I think Tevin Farmer is going to come out with look, he might have a lot of difficulty with Mickey Bey's like reach, with his height, and with his, accurate punching, and with Mickey Bey's defensive style. Like, Mickey Bey is a good fighter. I just think that Tevin Farmer might be the slightly sharper puncher in the second half of the fight. Like, he might be a little bit more active and a little bit sharper and a little bit better defensively in rounds like 6 through 10. So I'm going to go with Tevin Farmer winning via, I would say, split decision, but I'm going to go ahead and say unanimous decision here. I think it's going to be competitive, especially during the first half of the fight. It would, by the way, be a bad look for Tevin Farmer if Mickey Bey is able to outwork him in the second half of the fight. So I don't expect that. I think Tevin Farmer is going to win a 6 rounds to 4, 7 rounds to 3 type of fight. Or maybe you get one judge to call it a draw, and then the other 2 go Tevin Farmer's way. So either a majority decision win or a unanimous decision win for Tevin Farmer. But yeah, let me know what you think about Farmer versus Mickey Bey. Who do you see winning and how? Also, if Tevin Farmer does win against the former lightweight champ, or at least lightweight belt holder, sometimes like champion is used a little bit too loosely. Usually, like, I like to classify champions if you've defended the title or he did beat Miguel Vasquez to win the title. So, but all I'm saying is not all champions are equal. Sometimes they are more belt holder than champion. But if Tevin Farmer is able to beat the veteran Mickey Bey, what do you think happens with his career in this super stacked and loaded 135-pound division? They say, Ryan Garcia said that he's not going to come back down to 135, But they were talking about possibly having Ryan Garcia versus Tevin Farmer before they ended up making Garcia versus, this was after the Tego fight, so this would be before they remade the Ryan Garcia versus Javier Fortuna fight. But I was thinking, damn, that might be a little bit interesting between Ryan Garcia and Tevin Farmer. I hate to see that fight, of course. Of course, I would much rather see Gervonta Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia. Who wouldn't? But I wouldn't be surprised if they circle back. If they don't materialize that fight between Ryan Garcia and Tank Davis, I wouldn't be surprised if Golden Boy, Oscar De La Hoya and company circle back and make a Ryan Garcia versus Tevin Farmer fight, especially if Farmer looks good against Mickey Bay. But yeah, let me know what you think about it in the comments, and please like the video, subscribe to the channel. By the way, Tevin Farmer is no longer represented by one of the major promotional companies right now. So that's another thing to consider when matchmaking. Sometimes certain things could be worked out a little bit easier because you're a free agent and you don't have a promotional company that's playing hardball with the potential cross-promotional efforts, right? So maybe Tevin Farmer would be willing to work with just about anybody who gives him a call and says, hey, would you be interested in such and such? But yeah, just some things to consider. Let me know what you think in the comments, and please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the Fight Talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.